press. At the drill press, with my marks here, knowing where to drill it, I've got an 1/8 inch drill bit in here. What I did to know what size drill bit was I went and I got some toothpicks. Basically, you can get them at a hobby store. You can use regular toothpicks with a point on them. The hobby store, you can buy them without the point on them. They're fairly consistent and straight all the way through. And I mic'd them to determine which size drill bit I needed so that they would fit fairly snugly inside the holes. So when I put it back together, everything lines up fairly well without a whole lot of struggle. And I'm going to drill this before I do any grinding on it. The bit may not go all the way through. At this time, that's not really an issue. It's also not very or really important that the holes are completely perpendicular or lined up in the same fashion, because the two holes are basically independent of each other. You can shoot for that if you'd like, and I kind of do anyway, but sometimes the bit will walk because it's a small bit. You're drilling through a lot of hardwood and some glass and whatnot. Again, not a big deal. But I've got it lined up here. I've got some blocks to hold my bow up off of the plate of the press to kind of hold it pretty level. It does help out a little bit later on, so that eventually, as we're cleaning up the lower tenon and whatnot, we don't grind away one of our holes. If you do, again, that's not a big deal. I have done many bows utilizing only one alignment hole. Although they've all turned out just fine, I still feel more comfortable with two, and I have put some together with none whatsoever. But again, the alignment holes they make me feel better whether they work or are that important or not. When you're drilling these, you want to go down a little bit at a time, or your drill bit will certainly walk through, especially where it goes through the fiberglass. Okay, both of my holes are drilled. You see the holes in the back side of the riser? They did not come out the belly side. Again, not a big deal. As we grind the riser away now, we'll reveal those holes eventually when we start getting close to the actual size. From here, I'm ready to start relieving a lot of the material out around the riser. This can be done with a file. Although a file is a good bit of work, until you know that this is what you want to do, if you don't already have specialty equipment, you may not want to go any further than this. As far as buying specialty equipment, you may want to, you'll find out whether or not you like it, and you can do it by hand. The first a dozen risers I did completely by hand, and the harder the wood is, the harder it's going to be to work with files and stuff like that, but they certainly will turn out. Just a little more sweat. I'm going to check to see that all my gates are closed, and open up my vacuum. This is a knife grinder. It's a Grizzly knife grinder, not a cheap piece of equipment for what it is, but it works, does a good job. I've added a larger wheel on here to help bring it out away from the motor. It helps out a good bit in order to relieve this, but not all this has to be done while the bow is one piece. Okay. Yeah. Okay, with the exception of the throat, the smallest part of your riser is going to be down here around the bottom of your tenon. So if you relieve the bottom of your tenon or your lower end of your limb down enough to have a thick enough sleeve there, and you're looking at about 3/16 of an inch right in here, and I'm going to relieve it down a little more before it's all done, but I know that right now this is relieved enough to where my socket's going to be at least that thick everywhere from here on up. Now I'm going to relieve a whole lot more around the top, but this is typically as far as I'll go before I cut it into two. And again, this is just the way that I've developed my system for doing this. The holes haven't gone all the way through here, but I've relieved another 3/16 or so across the back side here. Before I move on to the next step, I'm going to finish drilling those holes all the way through. And again, if they don't go all the way through yet, it's still not a big deal. You can finish that off later. Alright, so I'll do that and then we'll come back here in a second. Okay, like